I sang that song not long ago at a performance, and during the break, a woman came up to me and introduced herself to me as being from Mississippi. And she said, I have it all wrong. She said the blues was born in Mississippi. There's 3 myths that I'd like to deconstruct for you. Myth number 1 is that the blues was born in Mississippi. Myth number 2 is that the definition of blues is sad and melancholy, down in the dumps, the blue devils. That's a fallacy. Myth number 3, and perhaps the most damaging myth of all, is that the more primitive the blues man or woman, the more authentic they are. I want to introduce you to the original thought and philosophy behind the blues, and you will see that primitivism is the very antithesis of the blues. I was born into the blues and its culture therewith. I came of age in my father's juke joint, Tabby's Blues Box, down on the bayou in Louisiana. I didn't learn the music from books, a university library, or a music conservatory. I learned the music firsthand. It was passed down to me from my father and many, many, many others who came before me. Subsequently, in 1985, I was discovered, quote unquote, by a folklorist from the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. I was introduced to the world as the last primitive folk blues artist of the 20th century. Not heir to my father's legacy necessarily, but heir to the legacies of Muddy Waters, who was discovered by a folklorist, and Huddie Ledbetter, better known as Leadbelly, who was also discovered by a folklorist. But what did they mean by that? I mean, I was introduced to a world that I didn't recognize. Everything that I had known had been turned upside down because the narrative around my culture, the narrative around my music was unrecognizable to me. So one of the things that was confounding was folk blues. And what do they mean by folk blues? I think when they say folk blues, they mean like folk as in agrarian blues or country blues, and Delta. Delta is another word, when they say Delta blues, it's just another word for primitive blues. I mean, the definition of folk is that it's from a pre-literate culture and passed on orally from generation to generation. But folk blues is kind of a oxymoron to me because the blues was born in New Orleans. The blues is cosmopolitan. It's an enlightened idea. So primitive enlightenment, I never understood that. It never made any sense to me. And as for the sad song, well, I have a sad song in my repertoire. Good morning, heartache, you old gloomy side. Good morning, heartache, thought we said goodbye last night. I tossed and turned until it seemed you had gone. But here you are with the dawn. But the thing about the sad song, it's been around since the beginning of time. Beethoven did sad songs. St. George, Amadeus, Beethoven and Bach, everybody did sad songs. We Louisiana musicians didn't invent the sad song. What we invented was Saturday night. In the late 1900s, America, a young nation, was looking for a musical identity. It had no identity of its own. And at that same time, in the late 1900s, African Americans were also, here in Louisiana, were also looking for a way to express themselves in their own unique way and try to create a voice of their own. There was a renaissance bubbling up. And around the early 1890s, there was a Christian hymn. And you might know this song. It was called When the Saints Go Marching In. It was a very genteel melody. And it might be sung like this. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Very genteel. But there was a young man in 1895 by the name of Buddy Bolden who heard that melody and thought he had a better idea. He had a better idea to use that melody to express his own creative energies, his own creative vision. And he would do that song something like this. Oh, when the saints go marching in, when the saints go marching in, oh, I want to be in that number. When the saints go marching in. And you know what happens? You know what happens in South Louisiana when the band strike up that refrain? People get to dancing, drinks start flowing, young ladies might even start undressing when we do that number. But let's put this in context. In the late 1890s, people were very superstitious. And this was the age of Victorian prudishness. And a song like this, sang by a musician, caused, great alarm to polite society. It was subversive music, but it was music of Renaissance, music, freedom of expression. Freedom of expression is something that we musicians call improvisation. But this idea was unique to Louisiana. It had the mechanisms the incubation, if you will, to create this music where it didn't really exist anywhere in the world in the 1890s. But eventually, it made its way upriver to St. Louis and Chicago. By 1917, the blues had taken Chicago by storm. It moved on to Harlem, and the Louisiana musicians got to Harlem and inspired the Harlem Renaissance. And this idea, this philosophy behind this music, it has gone on to inspire the whole world. It is the music of liberation, freedom of expression. It is the music that inspires you to seek your own expression. We musicians call it improvisation, but it's that pursuit of happiness that has spread around the world, and the world is a different place than it was back then. The blues was born in Louisiana, not Mississippi or Texarkana. The blues was born in, and one other thing I have to tell you. There was a young man by the name of Jelly Roll Martin. Jelly Roll Martin lived on Frenchman Street, right outside the French Quarter. And I must remind you that Louisiana is an old French colony. And the word blues is a French definition. It means that it's subversive, that it's a little risque. It's not the English definition. As a matter of fact, you guys might recall blue laws. Laws against dancing, having fun, just laws against basically having fun, so to speak. Well, the blues celebrate that. In a time of temperance, the blues was tolerant and inviting. The blues was born in Louisiana, not Mississippi or Texarkana. The blues was born in Louisiana, not Mississippi or Texarkana. It's a French word they don't understand. How can can it be sad when it makes you want to dance? And there's a smile on the face of everyone you meet down on the corner of Frenchman Street. The blues was born in Louisiana, not Mississippi or Texarkana. The blues was born in Louisiana, not Mississippi or Texarkana.